There was a moment on that trail ride where I truly believed my horse and I were going to die. And what she did next still gives me the chills. Bob and I had just moved to Southwest Florida, and everything in my life felt new. New home, new surroundings, new people, new trails. We boarded at a beautiful place called DJ's Stable. It was the kind of barn that instantly made you feel welcome. Lots of horses, friendly riders, that warm Florida sunshine. It felt like a fresh chapter of life. And I had Splendor with me. Splendor was my heart horse, a stunning Morgan mare I'd owned since she was just a yearling. By then she was 9 years old, elegant, confident, and absolutely aware of just how beautiful she was. Everywhere we went, people noticed Splendor. DJ's Stable was famous for its trail rides. Almost daily, groups would lead out into what we all called the Everglades. Now, it wasn't really the Everglades, of course, just miles and miles of underdeveloped Florida wilderness, but it felt like the Everglades to us. Wild land, raw land, the kind of place where nature still completely ruled. I often tagged along on those rides, partly because I wanted to learn the area, and partly because I wanted to make friends and just have someone to ride with. But if I'm being honest, I also loved showing off Splendor. She was every bit her beautiful name. She turned heads everywhere. One Saturday morning, I arrived at the barn and learned that only 3 riders were going out, a small group. Just the trail guide, a nurse, a gentleman who didn't have much riding experience, and me. They were heading to the furthest part of the trails, an area I had never been before. Something inside me hesitated, but I decided I would go anyway. As we rode deeper into the wilderness, my excitement slowly gave way to something else. Fear. Every time we crossed the water, I saw them. Water moccasins, sliding through the dark water, terrifying and unmistakable. And on the banks, enormous alligators, 12 feet, 14 feet, massive prehistoric creatures lying still, watching us all pass by. The trail guide admired them. I was silently saying prayers. I remember thinking very clearly, Lord, if you just get me safely off this trail today, I will never ride out this far again. And I meant every word. I was completely out of my comfort zone. Then something happened that changed everything. The gentleman in our group needed a quick restroom break. We all stopped and waited while he stepped behind a tree. No big deal, until he tried to remount his horse. He struggled getting back into the saddle, and somehow something he did startled his horse. In an instant, that horse exploded forward. I happened to be about 100 feet ahead, sitting quietly on Splendor having a drink of water, when I heard the commotion behind me. I turned and my heart just dropped. That horse, with that man hanging on, was charging straight at me. The rider was barely hanging on, hanging desperately by one stirrup, completely out of control. Without thinking, I reacted. Splendor was incredibly responsive, so I moved her forward, planning to step into the horse's path and stop it. I raised my hand and shouted with every ounce of authority I could muster, "Whoa!" That horse never even hesitated. At the last possible second, I realized that horse was not going to stop. I pulled Splendor back just in time as the horse thundered past. Then I heard it, a loud, sickening crack. The rider had fallen. And that sound, I was to learn later, was his ankle snapping. Chaos followed. Pain, fear. The nurse and trail guide immediately rushed to help him. We caught his horse, but it quickly became obvious that somebody had to ride back for help. I was the only one determined who could go back. The problem? I had not paid attention to the trail, not even a little bit. I had been so terrified of snakes and alligators that I barely noticed where I was going. But there was no choice. With absolute dread, I turned Splendor, following their directions as best I could, and rode off alone. It wasn't long before things became truly frightening. The creek that I believed to be a shallow creek suddenly deepened beneath us. Before I knew it, the water climbed from ankle deep to belly deep on my horse in seconds. Her stirrups disappeared under the water. That's when I saw them, alligators, swimming silently beneath the surface, gliding alongside my horse. I was beyond terrified, but wanting to stay calm to keep my horse calm. I gently turned Splendor's head so she wouldn't see them swimming by. My mind was racing. I had no idea which direction to take, so I stopped. I had been praying the entire ride, but now desperation took over. I remember thinking, what could God possibly tell me? I'm so nervous. I couldn't follow directions if he gave them. Still, I prayed. Lord, you have to help me. I am lost. We are surrounded by alligators. I cannot find my home. I truly felt at that moment like we were both going to die. And then something very quiet entered my mind. Tell your horse to go home. Now, Splendor had been trained to, quote, go home, but only from short distances. At the end of the rides, maybe 10 feet from her stall, I'd drop the reins, unsaddle her, and say, go home, and she'd walk 10 feet inside her stall for a treat. Eventually, I stretched that to 20 feet, then 30 feet, then 50 feet, all the way from the tacking up area so that she could walk back to her stall. And I was very proud of her for doing that. But never had I asked her to go beyond 50 feet. And this was wild. This was miles. This was something that she had never done before, yet it was my only hope. Softly I said, Splendor, go home. She flicked one ear back. She didn't move. I said it again. Splendor, go home. Another ear flick. The third time I said, go home with all the force that I had. She turned her head completely towards me as I'm sitting in the saddle, looking at me as if asking, are you serious? And I spoke from pure fear. Splendor, we are lost. I cannot get us home. If you don't help me, we're going to be in trouble. Something changed in her instantly. At that moment, I could see she understood. Splendor spun around, a full 180, not hesitant, not confused. She knew where she was going. As we marched forward in that deep, alligator-filled water, I could tell she knew exactly where she was going. I clung to the saddle horn, soaked, shaking, eyes half closed, while my horse took complete control. For 45 minutes, I did nothing. I didn't touch the reins. I didn't guide. I simply trusted her to go home. Slowly, I began to recognize landmarks, then trails, then certainty. I knew where we were. Still, I never took over. She had taken responsibility for us, and I wasn't about to interrupt. Splendor walked straight back to the barn. Because of her help was able to reach that injured rider. Because of her, I made it home safely. That day, she received almost an entire bag of carrots, which she absolutely deserved. But more than anything, that day changed the way I saw her forever. Because sometimes these horses take care of us. They return the love we give them, the training that we give them. Splendor didn't just carry me that day, she took care of me. And once you experience something like that, you never look at a horse the same way again. And here is an actual picture of Splendor and I, taken just 3 months after that fateful ride. I want to thank you for listening to this story and thank Splendor, who always brought me home. Please like and subscribe if you would like to hear more true stories. I want you to know that my husband and I are Amazon affiliates. We link to products that we use ourselves, that I use for our horses, and that we think will be really helpful for you in your life. Yes, we are get a little something from what you purchase, but we want you to know that we use those little fees to help support the horses we have now.